Hi, and welcome to the Bookkeepers Podcast. I'm Zoe Whitman, and today I'm not joined by Joe Wood, but I do have my other partner with me here, my lovely husband, Olly Whitman, founder of Laterally, and we wanted to have a chat about leadership today. Olly, it's really cool to have you on the podcast. I can't believe we're doing this. Whew. Do you want to start by telling us, well, do you know what? Everyone knows who you are. You're my husband, Olly, but tell me, how did you get into leadership coaching?
So for those that don't know me, I've had a 20-year-long career in the creative industry as most recently as a creative director at one of the world's largest advertising agencies. And I'm taking my learnings from that kind of career and applying it to the kind of people who might say something like, I'm not creative, I can't draw. To which I will tell you, you definitely are creative, and it doesn't matter if you can draw or not. I've had a pretty good career and I can't draw to save my life. Well, maybe, let's have a game of Pictionary at some point. But creativity and leadership, I think, are really closely linked in ways that you wouldn't necessarily imagine, which is where my kind of creative mindset comes in and where the idea of the company Laterally comes from. So we're taking a lateral view of leadership and helping people not only kind of have better ideas, but also collaborate effectively, right down to how people manage their time and how you can use your time management to become more creative at work.
So as the creative person, like by training, and I guess you went to school and uni and you thought, I need to learn about drawing and all this creative stuff. How has that led you into like seeing leadership as the important part of business now?
So, I mean, inevitably, as you spend a lot of time in a career, you go up through the ranks. So I went from general dog's body, T-boy, through the kind of ranks, middleweight, senior designer, into kind of director level roles. And with that comes management. So my own creative teams management, but also then I start to become much more client facing. And there's a certain amount of kind of creative leadership that I needed to take into those client meetings to, protect ideas and to make sure the ideas that we were presenting had a fair hearing and were considered, and they were introduced in the right way. So there's that kind of leadership. But I think leadership is also about asking questions, exactly like creativity is. Creativity is asking questions to start with before you then start to come into making ideas. You need to make sure you're answering the right question and coming up with the kind of ideas that are going to help you solve that. I've done what I always do and I've gone off topic. I can't remember what the question was.
I was thinking about like, how is creativity linked to leadership? And I know that we've had conversations before where you've gone into a business and you've done some kind of creative project with them, but to work, and I know like very different industry to the industry that bookkeepers listening to this are from. But generally that's like a project-based business. You're sent in to do something with an amount of budget to deliver some kind of creative product. Sorry, Olly, I'm making this sound like way more simple than it is. And there's obviously a lot of that comes with building teams, like project teams, to do a challenge who may not have worked together before, but also that you're going into a business to deliver something that I guess was set up to change something about the business. But then alone, that piece of creative work wasn't really the solution. I'm not saying it wasn't, because that was your job to go in and do that. Mm-hmm. But did you feel like having a creative brief was enough to solve the challenges you were going into businesses to focus on?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack with that question. So, I mean, firstly, just for your audience, I've had the pleasure of working with a huge variety of different businesses in different industries. Big businesses like global, as well as down to kind of small, small local independent businesses. So, creativity, it doesn't only happen in certain areas, and in creative campaigns it can happen absolutely anywhere. So it's about how you think and how you ask questions and solve problems. The creative brief part of the question, I was talking to a former client the other day, and he was smirking as I was saying this, because I was talking about presenting ideas back, and there's the brief that you're given, which is the thing that they want you to come up with, like the campaign that they might want you to come up with. But then there's the unwritten brief, and that might be like what the company really wants, right down to what that individual client really wants. They really need to make a shift and like move the needle, and what we provide to them, however creative it is and how much it gets people talking and thinking differently, is it answering their unspoken part of the brief? And his smirk was telling me that oh no, I didn't know you guys on the creative side knew about the unwritten briefs. Like, of course we did. And one of the things that has led me to this new kind of venture that I'm taking on now is that I'd go into these briefing meetings to pick up the brief at the start of a project. And quite a few times I'd leave thinking, oh, you know what, I'd really love to stay and work with that team, because I think my way of thinking and the way I can help them think differently would probably be more effective for the unspoken brief than however good our creative solution was going to be. It's not going to have the same impact. And I'd much rather kind of go in, dig a bit deeper and help them be more effective as a team, or to really identify the problem that they are really trying to solve. A campaign, is going to get people, it can be completely culture shifting, but it can also be wallpaper, depending on how brave they are and how much they want to commit to it. Sometimes we come up with some amazing work and they buy essentially the video and the poster, and it's like, that's great, but you're ignoring the hard bit, which is changing people's minds. And that's the bit of the creativity that I was interested in. Just to clarify that as well, that I worked in an advertising agency. We did a little bit of external kind of proper advertising stuff, but my role was predominantly for employee experience. So it's really understanding, the changing world of work. And that's another kind of string to the bow that brings me into the kind of leadership coaching space that I'm in now.
Okay, and just to be clear about what we mean by creative, because Olly, there are so many parallels here with what bookkeepers are doing, because we go into do bookkeeping in inverted commas if you're listening, and what we're really doing is going in and helping a client who is like overwhelmed, can't make decisions. Like, there's actually so much other stuff. Like, the real brief is to help them with that stuff. That's value. But when you were delivering creative briefs and you said about the poster or the video, what kind of things are we talking about here? What kind of things might you be pitching to a business?
So, one of the things, there's a lot talked now in the world of work about well-being. And there was one particular business which was very engineering focused, and they had a lot of long-standing engineers who are predominantly, mid-40s to mid-60s men, quite, on at face value, stuck in their ways. Oh, don't tell me how to do my job. But actually, you get enough guys in that situation together, they will, talk, chew the fat about how they would solve problems in X, Y, Z different ways. What I would do is this. Oh, no, but you forgot. They will really get into it. And eventually, if you get the setting right, that conversation starts to morph into a bit more, talking about how their life is, helping each other out, the well-being, mental health side of things. So we would come up with a campaign that on face value is about, an engineering side of their real work, as you might say. But actually, we spend so long at work that being able to have a safe space to talk amongst colleagues and all the rest of it is really important as well. And if you get those conditions right, the conversations, they kind of go back and forth between personal things, but also then with that greater understanding, there's greater empathy and respect, and the collaboration evolves, and you've got the conditions there for some amazing, unexpected ideas to pop up. And that's it, because if you're not comfortable to talk, let's just say, about what you did at the weekend, you're probably not going to be comfortable to come up with a little bit of a risky idea. that might just be the kind of the thing that's going to be the tipping point to solve the challenge. So if you could have those really safe talking spaces for people, that's really important. And we came up with something, that was a name that was relevant to their industry, but also made it sound a little bit like a pub. So it kind of gave it a bit of informality, but there was also a strong connection to their industry as well. And that was something that it takes a bit of a visionary kind of decision maker to kind of go, that actually is a really good idea. We thought you're just going to put some posters up and sort of say, it's good to talk, but it's far deeper than that. But it's also hard work, and that's why sometimes clients just want to kind of go, oh, I won't get fired, or I won't get told off for getting an animation made and some nice email footers and things. Whereas what we were really interested in my team was doing the hard stuff and making an impact on whatever the problem was, rather than just doing, going through the motions of just churning out some design work and changing the colors from the last project. We loved solving problems and getting under the skin of it. And the clients that I loved working with most were the ones that I'd go to talk about the brief and define the brief with them. And I'd end up thinking, I'd love to just stay with these people and help them. So that's what I'm trying to shape my career around now, is creating those kind of opportunities for myself, but also to help organizations.
It's really important, and I love it, because I like, I'm just thinking about those guys who might not feel like, oh, I'm not going to open up to these are just some people at work, but actually being able to start a conversation about important things. They probably have like really deep friendships now because they they're connected in a different way with their team. Yeah. I've worked in corporate, and I know, and I've been on the other end. I've been the person receiving the flyer or the email about your pension is changing, or those kind of things. So I've definitely been the person who's got in, and on my desk suddenly there's a leaflet that wasn't there yesterday, and I'm like, oh, that's something I can put in the recycling. So I can see how important it is to get that kind of thing right, to get people to buy into it. Or to understand the message, or do whatever the business really wants to change. They don't really want to just put out a leaflet. So I can see why leadership and making sure that this communication, because this is communication from the highest level of leaders, the people we would have never seen normally, I can see why that's important in an organization of thousands and thousands of people. But most of our listeners are working alone, or a team of one or two. There's lots of people I can think of who have like one bookkeeper working with them, or they might have a virtual assistant. Is leadership relevant to bookkeepers and accountants who are running very small teams?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, well, one of my key kind of sound bites at the moment is that I say that there is an I in team. Absolutely, every individual is important. And I think too often, in larger workplaces, you're told, oh, just be a team player. And, we can infer from that, oh, just forget about what matters to you. Just show up and be here for the team. And actually, I think for a team to truly be greater than the sum of its parts, we need to value the parts, the people to begin with. So even as a team of one, knowing how you work best on an individual level, you might be freshest to kind of just get your head down and focus first thing. And then you might need a little boost from, some social contact later on. So, maybe late morning or after lunch, book in your calls so you can have that kind of that boost of interaction later. And then you might just want to pick up on that momentum and just finish the day with a bit more focused work. Likewise, you might need to, pick yourself up with some, unexpected conversations and, those kinds of things by doing calls first thing in the morning. So understanding how you work best is a form of leadership. It's a sort of self leadership. And if you do have a team, if you know yourself as an individual and you've got some answers to those kind of questions, which is something that companies very rarely kind of encourage their employees to think about, but think about what you know about yourself as an individual, and those things that, oh God, I wish they would just know that about me. Like if you know it about yourself and you can communicate that, then you can tell people the things that they should know about working with you, how you work best.
Mm-hmm.
But you appreciate that about other people then. So you appreciate they've got different working kind of preferences. So then that kind of empathy and respect increases. And then once you've got that, you can work out scheduling that's going to make each person in the team work to their kind of preferred kind of optimal settings. And if you do that, then the collaboration improves. So collaboration isn't chaos anymore. Everyone feels a bit more respected and valued. And once you've got collaboration sorted, so like a leveling up situation from like the basics of time management through collaboration. If you've got that sorted, it's only really then that you can get to, really, really good problem solving, idea generation, innovation, which is, I would call all of that creativity. But you can't just be creative on tap. And that goes for people in the creative industry. We couldn't just, although we were often scheduled to try and do this, like we could just kind of magic things out of thin air. You can't just do the thing in a certain time window. You need the conditions to be created.
Like you've got 30 minutes, be creative now.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the same for anyone. You need that time to do your deep work. And I think for bookkeepers especially, there is going to be time when you need to kind of just have that. By the way, when I say deep work, there's a really good book by Cal Newport, I think it is. Don't have to read it. You can listen to a Blinkist or something like that for a brief thing. But you've got deep work, which is where you're focusing and you just really want to get into the zone. And then shallow work is stuff like answering emails, being in meetings, kind of doing a little bit of scheduling, doing all those little kind of more administrative things. But from what I know of bookkeeping, there is going to be stuff where you need to focus and you need to kind of immerse yourself in the story that those numbers are telling you, and you be able to pull out that information. And then there's time that you've got to do the working on the business stuff, like it might be marketing, it might be talking to leads, all of those kinds of things that you can time box that and put that into a certain space. But every industry has got certain parallels, I think, in the way you work. There's doing your real work, and how many times have you been in back-to-back meetings all day long and had to then do your real work in the evening or on your own time in some way, and fitting in not ideal time, you never really feel that great about the finished product, and just move it on to the next thing.
Yeah, so that's really common in like people. I mean, you will have seen it with me as well, but it's really common that. So, great example. My working day, I try and work school hours. That means that anything where there is another human involved, a meeting or whatever, needs to happen in those school hours. But if that time gets filled, then the deep work has to happen later on, which is really difficult when you've got kids play fighting or wanting a camel ride in our house, and you just can't get your head down and get the work done, and that's really frustrating. And I think that keeps lots of people stuck. And actually, just a sort of observation from the group, the community, is it maybe even stops people from taking the next step because they're waiting for that phase of their life to reach a changing point, and then they'll be ready. So are you saying, because we've spoken a lot about time management, and I know leadership isn't just time management, that's one of those core principles, got to get that foundation right. Are we, like, these meetings that we feel we have to have, are you saying that they're stopping us from real leadership?
Yeah, good question. Meetings, like, they are essential. They are the time when we kind of come together with other people and collaborate. But the trouble is, we're often not taught how to do meetings. No one teaches you how to do a meeting. You just sort of turn up and, at the start of your career, and you start to learn and just sort of see, all right, that's how meetings work. Okay. And you just take that on through. And I think actually, anyone can be a leader. It's not a job title. It's a mindset. And like I said, it starts with asking questions. If you question, like, is this the best way to run a meeting, or do I need to be in this meeting even at all? You can start to work meetings to be actually valuable moments where collaboration is really happening, rather than, you're still on Tuesday lunchtime starting every meeting with like the small talk about kind of people's weekends and stuff. It's making a meeting count. I think you could definitely have a shorter working week if you got the work done and you were able to get the work done, because you had fewer meetings that were more focused and concise, and then a bit more deep work time. So you get the work done. That's the simple thing. There's so much you can hide in meetings all day long, and I bet people, certainly people I know, who kind of go, oh, I was back to back to back to back all day. Like, oh, great. It's a good excuse, because like you look really busy, but you've not done anything. But hey, I was in a meeting, so it was okay. I was working really hard, but you just haven't got anything to show for it. And I think something I'm definitely learning as I switch myself from like employee to kind of business owner is there's a lot of responsibility to take for making the time work. And that's the I in team kind of thing, isn't it? It's understanding like, oh, hey, I've got some stuff to do here. I need to make sure it happens. And it is hard, but actually taking kind of a bit of ownership for understanding how I work, getting the systems in place, and being able to do the things that need to get done when they need to get done is part of it. And that in a way can seem counterintuitive for kind of someone talking about creativity. It's like, oh, hold on, aren't you supposed to be kind of like out there and like kind of no rules like apply? But actually there's a lot of structure and routine that goes into creativity. And we talk about the freedom of a tight brief. So the more constraints you have, the more creative you can be. It's not necessarily thinking outside the box, it's maybe think inside the box and just make sure you've given yourself the right box to think inside. But maybe that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, obviously we're working in a profession that's really regulated, and we do feel like it has to look a certain way. I'm thinking like when I was starting out in business, I was like, oh, I have to work within these parameters, and that felt quite, I don't know, I suppose I've learned over time I'm more creative than I thought I was. And I felt quite kind of trapped in it has to look like this. So I was always looking for, well, how can I do it in my own way within that? Can I just go back to the time management thing? So I am definitely guilty of being the person that says to you at the end of the day, I have been in meetings all day. I have to sit quietly and get on with some things. And you know that. And we've got a team, like our whole team is part-time, apart from Joe and I. I know we run a different kind of business to the bookkeepers listening into this, but we're always juggling when people are available or where the contacts we want to speak to are available. And that just naturally means that work will happen after the kids are home from school, for example, to make sure that it gets done. I think the most frustrating thing for me actually is the follow-up points that come from meetings, the actions, and then be like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything because I'm going straight into another meeting. You mentioned asking yourself, do I even need to be in this meeting? Which is a really great question. What are the other ways to like, how can we get more out of that time? Like, what would you be doing if you started speaking to someone now who said, I'm always in meetings? What process would you go through with them to help them get more of what's important done?
Okay, I've got a couple of ideas there. One that I really like is like having essentially like make meetings almost like a ticketed event. So by that I mean you have to have done something beforehand to kind of gain access to the meeting, whether that's read the pre-read and submitted a question. So you're not in the meeting and then the first 5-10 minutes you're thinking, what's this one about? You've already read what the meeting is about, and there's been some questions submitted. The person like who's chairing the meeting has prioritized the top few questions, kept some back, binned some off because they're not completely relevant. And so to get into the meeting, you've already had to understand what it's about and had some thoughts. So you've put your questions in there. You've got some thoughts that you may have come up with, as it always happens. You write your questions, hit submit, and then a few hours later, oh no, something else. So there's another idea or something that you can just have on your sort of pad in front of you. So there is that. There's making sure that the people you're inviting definitely need to be there, but also just keeping it really on time and on track. I think there are too many meetings that have got too many agenda points. So you've just been through 80% of the time that's in the diary, and you've been through the first point, and everyone's just kind of relaxing, kind of going, oh great, we're nearly there. And then you flick onto the other screen and kind of go, oh god, there's another 4 agenda points for the next 15 minutes. And you realize it's either not going to happen, or you're going to be in that meeting for at least another half an hour, but you can't because you've got another meeting, you've got a hard stop. So there's that. And
so ticketed, you need to pass the test to enter the meeting. If you haven't passed the test, you can't get in. I really like that.
I mean, keeping the meeting small as well, like, so there aren't too many people. I think it was Steve Jobs at Apple had like the 2 pizza rule. So if you've got more people than can comfortably have 2 pizzas between them, there's too many people. It is Amazon. They do the pre-read. They've got a bit of a different system where you have to write a 6-page document, and everyone has to read it in silence at the start of the meeting, which I think is great if it works for them. I think is a bit of a tricky one to implement, but making sure that people have really got into the material of the meeting beforehand, because then it's you need to be there, because you'll see the relevance to you. And if you're reading it thinking, I don't know why I need to be in this, then you can raise that beforehand, so you're not wasting the extra time of going to the meeting.
Yeah, I love that. This is amazing. I love what we can learn from other businesses. That's the power of like being in business and like not thinking I have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, Joe and I like Traction, the book Traction, and it's made us get really clear on when we have a team meeting, what do we have to cover. So there's actually like 15 minutes for that meeting. I mean, inevitably it stretches to 30, but that's so much better than a 1-hour meeting. So
yeah. And I mean, if you are in a kind of bit of a culture where there are back-to-back meetings, why does it have to be half an hour or an hour? Make your meetings 25 minutes and 50 to 55 minutes. So you've either got a little bit of buffer room on the meeting, or you at least give people a chance to have a bit of a comfort break between meetings, so they're not kind of coming into the next one like 2 minutes late, completely flustered, because they will still, for the first 10 minutes, be in that previous meeting. Or on that previous meeting they will have like completely zoned out as they're working out their question points and everything for the next meeting. So like, people's heads aren't going to be in the game. So not only are you stopping them do real deep work, but they're not even really able to fully function in the meetings and in the busyness of the conditions you're creating.
Oh my gosh, I've learned so much today, even though I spend like every day with you. I've been thinking about like what we can do better in business. Anyone who's listening to this, because we all have meetings, whether it's you and a team member or whether it's you and your clients, because to an extent we need to kind of manage our clients as well to do the best work for them. So lots of things to take away. I can see that there's definitely a part 2 of this coming. Olly, I'd love to know how people can connect with you. I'd love to hear about your new podcast that's coming up as well, as people can go and have a look for that and subscribe.
Sure thing. Yeah. Well, so I know I can talk when I get on a topic that I'm interested in. I can talk, and Zoe often says to me, "I love you, but get to the point." So if you feel like I haven't got to the point quick enough, or I've made points that you're interested in talking more about, connect with me on LinkedIn. I've also got a score app up at the moment, which is all about taking your team from stuck to stellar. Ask a few questions on there, and the link to that will be through my bio on LinkedIn. And podcast is called Get to Work. There's a few ways you can kind of interpret Get to Work, but that's coming up shortly. And again, links from my LinkedIn and also websites and other social channels.
Perfect. We will go and subscribe to Get to Work. And remember to subscribe to the Bookkeepers Podcast as well if you haven't done that already. Thank you so much, Olly, for chatting to me this week. And we'll see you. I'll have Joe back next time, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Bookkeepers Podcast. Take care. Bye.
Bye.